I'm Angela. I'm director of WAHWN, which is the Wales Arts, Health and Wellbeing Network. And every 2 weeks, we hold space for arts and health projects who've been funded by the Arts Council of Wales Arts, Health and Wellbeing Lottery Fund to come together to share where they're at, to share their challenges, but also their achievements. And just a reminder, really, that this is a safe space where you can share where you're at. And we're not reporting directly back to the Arts Council of Wales, but what we do is kind of, if there are kind of common themes or challenges coming through, then we may look at that with the Arts Council and others to see how we can support you as appropriate. So just this morning, actually, a report came into my inbox, and it is called What Does an Arts and Health Organisation Do? And last September, I was interviewed by Alex Cutler of Flinders University in Australia, and they've just published this report, and I haven't had time to read it in any detail, but what I was really struck by is that all the 22 organisations across the world that they'd interviewed all pretty much said the same thing, that one of the key things they did, one of the fundamental things they did and saw most value in, was learning groups, network meetings. In the words of Kunali Adewale from the Global Arts in Medicine Fellowship, he said that they offer opportunities to hold space for support, help to build connections, and help to support each other. That's kind of what the learning group is all about. So it's about us supporting each other. Just as a reminder then, the learning groups also are a legacy from the HARP programme that some in the room were involved in. So HARP programme was the Health Arts Research People, that was a collaboration between WAHWN, Arts Council Wales, Nesta and Cardiff University. And that's the one really key thing that's stuck and is a legacy from the HARP programme. But the other thing that came out of the HARP programme was a number of recommendations for funders, for policymakers, for arts and health networks. And one of the recommendations for funders was that they offered kind of coaching or non-financial support along with grants, and it was setting projects up in this way that helped to develop long-term success. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to bring David Cutler into the room, because David from the Bearing Foundation has kind of really embodied some of that or most of that recommendation about being not just a funder but an investor, and really listening to what the sector needs. So WAHWN and others have regular dialogue with David, who's really keen to hear what the challenges are. So I really applaud him for that. So the Bearing Foundation, if many of you will know, and many of you may have had funding from the Bearing Foundation, have supported several pan-Wales initiatives and long-term programmes, not least Cartrefi, the Creative Ageing programme, and currently supporting a pan-Wales Arts and Minds programme that some of you are involved in, but also supported our WAHWN conference last year alongside the Arts Council, bringing together politicians, policymakers and funders, and really helping to kind of progress the conversation around the value and impact of our work. So I am going to hand over to David. Oh no, before I do that, actually, I wonder whether we could go around the room, and I will need you to be brief because there are quite a lot of people in the room, but as by way of introduction for David and for each other, to just say who we are, very briefly what our project is, And if you could mention maybe what the health challenge is, that would be really beneficial. So may I pass over? Becca, you start because you're here with two hats on.
Yeah, cool. So with my other hat on, I'm a project manager at Inside Out Cymru. We're an art and mental health charity that operate across Gwent. Our project is called Reaching Further, and it's supporting people with dementia across Gwent in clinical, residential and community settings through the arts. So yeah, that's everything. It should end next March, so it's quite a quick project. I'll pass over to Caris, who's to the side of me here.
Thanks, Becca. Hi, everyone. I'm Caris. I'm the projects coordinator for People Speak Up, which is an arts and health charity. We're based in Llanelli, but work throughout West Wales. Our project, Creative Home Delivery Service, is visiting those who are older, lonely, isolated, and matching them up with an artist for weekly creative sessions. So that could be movement, singing, art, poetry, creative writing, wire work, anything that suits that person, storytelling. And they have an hour a week just connecting with each other and being creative. So I'll pass on to Tracy.
Morning, everyone. I'm Tracy Pallant. I'm the project manager for Oasis One World Choir, which is set up nearly 10 years ago to welcome people seeking sanctuary in Wales. So it's a wellbeing project, obviously, to support the health and wellbeing of people displaced from their home countries. So I will go to Charlotte.
Hello, I'm Charlotte. I'm Programme Manager for at ESOT, which runs Dance to Health. So we're running Dance to Health programme in Swansea, which is a falls prevention programme. So we use dance and postural stability instruction to try and prevent falls amongst older people. We also have social time as well. So some of it's about tackling loneliness and isolation as well. I'll pass to Nick.
Hi, I work for ACE, Action in Cairo and Ely. We're a community space and we've got an art workshop there, and I've been running art workshops for several years. So my current project is an Arts Council Wales Arts Health and Wellbeing project, which I've just started last week. And the main focus is social prescription, because we've got a big wellbeing team there that covers Southwest, West and North Cardiff. So we're running from Dusty Forge and from Chapter Art Centre weekly wellbeing art sessions. And I'll pass on to Sian.
Hi everyone, my name is Sian Elin and I work for Theatr Genedlaethol. I'm the participation coordinator. I think you know my colleague Nia Skirm, but I support Nia on our project called Ara Di Bin. So Ara Di Bin is a creative workshop that offers support for people that have been affected by addiction and the opportunity for them to come together and process, I suppose, their lived experience through creativity. So yeah, that's that. I shall pass on to Iwan.
Diolch, Sian. I'm Iwan. I'm Artistic Director of Theatr Cynefin. We're on the second phase of piloting a new creative mindfulness course for NHS staff in 5 health boards. And at the moment, I'm training trainers to be able to deliver this course when we scale up in the coming years.
Thank you.
I'll pass it on to Tiki.
Good morning, Bore da. I'm Tiki Lowe, and the CEO of Making Sense, which is a charity, and we're based in North Wales. Our project is called Culture in Care. We're going to be working with, well, we have started to work with activity coordinators from residential care homes in Wrexham. It's about their well-being. It's about the well-being of the activity coordinators and how we can look to support them. So it's a pilot project.
Thank you. Tiki, do you want to pass on to someone?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Tara, other part of my project. Tara Dean.
Hello, Yeah, I'm a freelance artist based up here in Denbighshire, supporting the care staff, working with Wrexham Council, and yeah, working with Making Sense with this pilot project, trying to continue the work that we both did with Cutler and other projects. Yeah, I'll pass on to Alicia.
Borada, everyone, good morning. My name is Alicia, and I'm the Business Development Director at Tanyo, which is a community arts charity based in Bettis in the Garrow Valley in Bridgend County. We have a whole program of arts and health work, but this particular project is called Breathing Space, and it takes place in 7 locations across Bridgend County and 1 in RCT. It's weekly drop-in well-being sessions that have a creative twist to them. So some of the groups sing, some of the groups do creative writing, some do crafting, some do songwriting. And it's just about creating a space where people feel they can take a break and enjoy themselves and be themselves in a creative setting. So a big thing that we face in a lot of our groups is massive health inequalities because of geographical isolation. So the groups are really in locations where it's difficult to get to the GP, let alone to a hospital. So that's a massive focus for us. I'll pass along to Becca.
Hi everyone, I'm Becca and I'm the Artistic Director of Familia Theatre. We're a theatre company working all over Wales, and we are running a project called Dancing the Parenting, which is working with the perinatal mental health team at ABMU to work with mums who have experienced postnatal depression, and it's about connecting them with their bodies and with their kids through movement and also music and also art. Thanks very much. I'll pass on to who hasn't been. Gail.
Hi, I'm Gail, and I'm an artist based in Cardiff, and have recently been working with inpatients and therapy dogs at WAHWN psychiatric unit, which was a sort of pilot partnership project with the activities team there. I don't think there's any, is there? Johan.
Hi, Borada. Yes, I'm Johan. I'm the Arts and Health Service Manager for Swansea Bay NHS. I'm one of the people who's benefited greatly from David and the Bering Foundation over recent years. That's kind of why I'm here, actually, to catch up. But I thought, yeah, so we've got a few different projects at the moment. I guess what we're addressing is sort of health inequalities and combining arts and prescription and nature. And in collaboration with WAHWN, we're addressing NHS staff well-being as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Johan. I think Sharon, last but very much not least, Sharon.
Hello, hi there, I'm Sharon, I'm from Rubicon Dance. The project last year, which was about supporting people in prevention, recovery and keeping active in the community. We worked in the hospital and in the community section, so working across multiple wards and in the community. And this year we're taking it on another step again. So we found some great models last year about how to connect the community to hospital. So we're trying to put that across our programme in a wider scale this year. So we're in about 25 different wards over the year, and there's about 10 odd community sessions. So we've got a new dementia programme that we're setting up in the community this year, and a new neuro sessions in the community, and then our existing programs that we've already had happening as well, ticking along. We lead them in partnership with the Arts and Health and Wellbeing charity. So we are in a bit of flux at the moment, as you might know about their situation where they might not continue in their posts. So we're still working within the health board and finding different partners within the health board in Cardiff and Vale as well to link to. So we work quite closely with Liberal Services as well, on their escape paying programme, and hopefully on their Aging Well programme as well. So yeah, lots of different bits, but under the whole kind of thing of general prevention, recovery, and keeping active in the community as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Sharon. And welcome, Fadhili. Hi. Just on cue, where we've just gone round the room introducing ourselves. So it'd be really nice if you could just say who you are and what project you're representing. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Sorry I'm late. So my name is Fadhili Magia, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Sub-Saharan Advisory Panel. And we are a network of African communities in Wales, really working or operating and supporting communities in Wales, but also having one leg within the continent. So really looking at how do we support communities back home as well. And for the project that we're doing is called How You Day, which is Pidgin English for How Are You? And we are working with 3 creatives from the community to deliver creative workshops here in Cardiff. So the focus is mostly Cardiff. And the artists themselves, we have one photographer, a body art artist, and a mixed artist. So it's very diverse, it's very mixed. And yeah, we were very much kind of halfway through the project at the moment. And looking for exhibition spaces, and yeah, that's where we are.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So hopefully that gives you, David, and all of us a kind of a bit of a snapshot of the diversity of projects and practice. There's some kind of common themes and areas of focus, particularly around creative ageing, well-being, mindfulness. But yeah, they're all very different, and it's just so rich to hear about what you're up to. So can I invite you, David, to kind of share a bit about the Foundation's work and anything else you want to share with us today? Oh, you're on mute at the moment, David.
The main thing I wanted to share with you is what an amazing and incredibly impressive range of work that is. My mind is buzzing. So I have got some prepared remarks that takes you through what the Bearing Foundation does. But I'm going to do that very in a nutshell to start off with. Then there's a whole series of notes that I made about things that I want to connect particular people with. So I'll do very, very quick Bearing Foundation. I must remember these things because they really relate to what you're doing, and then I'll give you a bit of a bigger overview. So not very tidy. I'm quite a tidy person, but I'm not being tidy this morning. So the Bearing Foundation is an independent grant maker. We give grants across the UK. We also have a program in sub-Saharan Africa, which is about LGBTI rights, but 2/3 of the funding is in the UK, and 1/3 of that is what I'm going to talk about now, which is our participatory arts program for people living with mental health problems. So it is narrower than it's broad in that it's across the UK, and it's broad that it's across art forms, but it's a somewhat narrower focus that we're talking about working with people with mental health problems, and I will come back to that rather than the huge range of arts and health. And it's not that we don't recognise that all of that's important, it's just that it's too much, we can't cope, but there's too many, even with a focus on arts and people with mental health problems. It's an absolutely vast terrain which everyone here is going to understand. So I just want to pick on a few of the amazing things that you were talking about, that very specific things are up to at the moment. I mean, Becca will know that we are funding Inside Out Cymru for a different project under our new programme for participation by men. I think it was Sian that talked about addiction. How interested. I didn't know you were doing that. We've got a new publication out. I don't know if you've seen it on the website at the moment. We tried to encourage its author to have some examples in Wales, and we didn't encourage her hard enough, so we should have had you, Sian. I'm sorry about that. There is going to be a Zoom launch this afternoon at 4 o'clock. If you're interested, you'd be extremely welcome. I think the whole area of arts programs with people living with addictions is absolutely fascinating, and there was some tremendously interesting, creatively minded in recovery, there's some tremendously interesting projects in there. We also talked about, I think it was asylum or refugees, and I've already lost it. Just to point out, there's a whole series of publications on the website, but one of them is creatively minded refugees, and that's another fascinating selection of projects from across the country with strong emphasis on trauma and mental health problems with refugees who are working creatively. Just to say, we gave a follow-up grant to the wonderful Counterpoint Arts, which is a variety of different projects that they run, always about arts and refugees. And there will be an event, is my memory, in Wales. I think it's Cardiff, but on their website they'd talk about that. So there's a programme about refugees with mental health problems. I'm always fascinated, though I shouldn't be, about working care homes, which is our previous programme, and I wasn't aware of the work in Wrexham. Absolutely fascinating. It's something that we're continuing to try and uncover in England. And just say that you probably know that we're continuing to fund something called the National Arts in Care Homes Day, which happened on the 24th of November and was absolutely wonderful. And it's run by NAPA. And the last little notes were perinatal. So at the moment, I think that was Becca, two Beccas. There's a blog by my colleague Harriet at the moment up on the website that looks at a number of projects. It hasn't got yours in, I don't think, so it'd be fantastic to learn more about it. But I think that project might be mums with perinatal mental health problems, but we are actually funding several projects about dads, including one in Bristol. When I see Johan, I always think of photography, and we are funding a new program about photography in Leeds and the use of photo voice. And Johan also mentioned nature, and there's definitely in this new series of projects that we're funding 32 projects for greater participation of men in creative mental health. There's quite a theme. There's a bit of a theme about use of photography. There's definitely a theme about arts and nature, going out into nature and being inspired by nature. Anyway, those are my little, so there's a whole series of things that I want to come and visit and find out about. Okay, I've got that off my chest. What does the Bearing Foundation do? So we've had this arts creatively minded program, which is creative opportunities for people with mental health problems. And we have an extremely strong focus on participatory arts. It's very rare for us to fund anything that isn't participatory arts across art forms and across the UK. Started in 2020. We have about getting around for 1.5 million of our own funding. There's quite a lot of partnership funding that we're doing. A couple of examples I will mention to you. So it tends to end up as something a bit closer to say 2.5 million when you include those partnership funds. It has been a voyage of discovery, my word. It's something I knew really precisely nothing about, and I've just been. The story I always tell is that we asked someone to do some research for us before we started, and she said, well, it'd be a good area for the Daring Foundation to work in. It's the area that a small amount of money would go a long way. It could be quite strategic. There isn't much happening. And I started to look at it and I thought, why did we pay you any money? That's absolutely untrue. There's not much happening. There is an absolutely vast amount of, there are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of projects across the UK that are working with people with mental health problems. They tend to be fairly small scale. There's very few larger projects. They tend to be extremely grassroots and very local. Some of them are very, very long established and extremely expert, and then others come up through need all the time. But there is, I find, a completely overwhelming array of projects across all art forms, and whether that's on a psychiatric ward, in a community venue, in a community arts venue, or in a larger arts venue, they are everywhere. So we've been finding that, to be honest, difficult to cope with. We are constantly disappointing people. Our most recent open round, we had fantastic applications. We got 192 applications. Very few of them were not fundable quality. When we increased our funding to more than we could really afford, we managed to fund 32 projects working with men. But it just shows that the level of need is immense, and there are swathes of high quality projects all across the UK. We've tended to focus on a couple of themes. Those keep changing and evolving. So we have had a series of partnerships with the National Arts Councils. Obviously, the one that's most relevant for you, our partnership Arts and Minds with Wales. WAHWN will know that backwards. I think all of you will be aware of that. We're giving partnership programme funding to the arts coordinators and health boards to work with people with mental health problems. And the second phase of that project, which is being discussed by our trustees next week, is a new 3-year programme that would focus much more on young people with mental health problems. But we also have different partnerships with the other 3 national arts councils, and they're all really, really different. I don't think any of the national arts councils would disagree that the Arts Council Wales, for all the problems that they find themselves in, have been by far the most strategic when it comes to arts and health, and over a long period of time of sustained attention. And the other arts councils hope that they can go in the same direction. Then there's themes that have come up. So big theme has been the different support needs of artists working in this area. That's why we're funding WAHWN for your project, but we fund several other projects outside Wales. We've had a big issue of diversity, particularly diversity in terms of ethnicity and the ethnicity of artists. It is relatively, so the arts are quite white in terms of the workforce, but that's even more true when you look at arts and health. Why is that? I'm not sure everyone's got a huge amount of evidence, but we definitely think that that's something that needs to shift. And we've had the biggest area of funding that we've had has actually been about that. So we've had about 40 projects in all, probably almost none in Wales. These have been open rounds, very, very few applications from Wales, which I'm sure I've forgotten something, but and those have been about the ethnic diversity of the creative workforce, and also greater participation by people from global majority communities in creative mental health. I've already started talking about, we then also said, well, it would appear to us that fewer men of any ethnicity are participating in arts and creative mental health, and that also appears to be true about the workforce in terms of gender. It seems to be an extremely female workforce. What's the implications of having a female workforce? That's also true of caring professions like nursing and therapy. They're very strongly female workforces. What are the reasons for that? Is it about structural inequalities? Whatever the reasons, what are the implications of that? So we've had a big new round about men's participation. So you'll see that it's a constantly evolving program. It's something that's just about to be evaluated. We will have had 5 years of work this year. We're just appointing evaluators to look at how that's going, but I would be amazed if we're not continuing for at least another 5 years. In terms of sort of issues, quite frankly, you know all of them backwards. So everyone's talking about the pressures on artists, the pressures on mental health services and how they work with you when that's relevant, the need for training for artists, what sort of training, the need of support for artists, the need for more better ways of working between the health service and artists, for health services to have a greater understanding of what creativity can offer, and profound underfunding really across the arts sector, which the Baring Foundation absolutely cannot begin to. We can't touch the side in terms of that, but we can try to encourage others to do more. So it is a voyage of adventure where we haven't got the answers, but we want to meet as many of you as possible and talk to as many of you to try and synthesize and understand what's happening in this incredibly exciting, very challenging, very, very absolutely centrally important sector of the arts. I shall stop there and happy to be with you for longer. I'll have forgotten a lot of things, but I got overexcited listening to the things that you're doing.
I got excited as well. Just it's good to be reminded of the kind of diversity of practice that's going on, but the challenges that we're all facing, particularly around funding. So we've got David maybe for another 40 minutes or so. So I could just open the floor. You might have questions for David or reflections on some of the things that he's brought up. Ewan?
Thanks, David. And it's lovely to see things from the perspective of the funders and the struggles. You mentioned this, the 3-year program of Arts and Minds would be targeted at young people. How do you define young people? Is it the European model, 11 to 30, or is it?
I'm going to just double check with WAHWN, but my memory is it's going to be CAMS, and I thought CAMS finished at 18. WAHWN, have I got that right?
Depends a little bit on. So
Okay.
CAMS is children and young people's mental health, and it depends a little bit on the person. So some will be considered sort of not suitable for that service anymore when they're about 16, you know, depending on how much of a risk they are to themselves or to staff or things like that. It's not, I mean, this is not my area of expertise, obviously, but yeah, it depends a little bit. But, you know, usually, yeah, it's up to 18. And then there's can be a little bit of a sort of gap between young people's mental health and the adult mental health services, where a lot of people will sort of fall off the radar a little bit. Yeah, so in preparation for this, the Arts and Minds focus on young people, I've been talking to our CAMS services, and it seems that what they're most keen to focus on in our area, at least, is actually early intervention, early sort of identification and preventative care. So we did a little exercise where we kind of looked at young people's mental health as a sort of road, and then looked for the potholes that we might be able to fill in, because they, you know, it's all very carefully monitored and everything, and it's not appropriate to bring us into every area. But I think it's the sort of gaps where, you know, somebody's been identified as likely to need support, so they have a school in-reach service where they'll identify that, you know, somebody is very likely to need mental health support later in life, either because of their, you know, social circumstances, or just I think almost 50% of people who end up with CAMS are neurodiverse in some form, and yeah, so they have different factors where they can identify, but then it can take ages then before they get even assessed, and then after assessment it can again take a long time before they get any sort of support. So it's sort of filling in those gaps where we might be able to do some real to have a real impact. So yeah, but to answer your question, it's up to 18. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you. And a couple of extra points on. So our programme, we're being responsive to what colleagues in Wales have suggested as the focus. We haven't said the focus needs to be on 11 to 18-year-olds. That's their suggestion, which seems entirely appropriate to us. And a few other things about work with young people. There are interesting models around. So last year we it wasn't even last year, it's this year. There's a very interesting organisation in Manchester called 42nd Street, which is really the largest youth organisation that's solely concerned with young people with mental health problems. Quite a substantial staff and a very big arts programme. And we funded them to do a conference on creativity and young people with mental health problems, probably in May, along with Arts Council England. If it is an area of interest to anybody, they formed what they call a community of practice of arts organisations that are particularly interested in young people's mental health. Let's get this straight. The South Bank Centre in London, I think, have publicly said and are trying to engage us. They want to create something that they call a creative health youth centre as a new model at the South Bank. And we've funded, I hope I'm getting this right, there are 32 projects. Overall, we fund hundreds of projects, which I can't remember. And for the new round, it's 32 projects, and I keep getting them mixed up. So I think it's Community Music Wales that we're funding, that have said that they want to create a model of young people's mental health that's based on a Finnish approach, which I've actually been to see, called culture houses. Now, these culture houses are young people centres for young people with mental health problems, with obviously, as it says, an emphasis on culture. And they do actually, obviously, they follow the European model, which is in fact up to 30. But I've got a feeling that the Community Music Wales, I can't even remember. I've got a feeling it was 18. Ages are a funny thing, aren't they? It's a pretty blunt tool about people's development, but there we are.
I've worked for many years with culture houses.
Oh, amazing.
Across Scandinavia and the continent. And
how astonishing. That's so wonderful.
They're staffed by, if you want to become a teacher there, you train for 4 years, but you can become a teacher in a school or a culture house. So they're highly trained staff. And
do you mind if WAHWN puts you in contact with Community Music Wales if you're not already in contact with them?
Yeah, I've worked with them in the past, but
you have. How wonderful! That's a fantastic connection. Well, Marcus is coming to Wales to come and talk about culture houses in Finland.
Yeah, they're in France, Denmark, Norway, but we're quite behind in that area. Yeah.
It's an interesting idea for a future network meeting. Any more questions for David? Oh, Fadhili, you got your hand up there.
Yeah, I do. And no, thank you, David, for all that information. I think some of it I'm not so surprised. I think in terms of global majority communities not necessarily applying on for this kind of work. We for ourselves, it's been the first time we're applying for arts and health as an organization, and obviously this is the project we're delivering at the moment is a short pilot, and hoping to scale up, hopefully, if it does go accordingly. But beyond this project, we also have another project called Jamii, which means community in Kiswahili. And Jamii has been funded by the National Community Lottery Fund, and it's for 3 years. And for that, we've been able, I'm very interested in kind of the male mental health side of things, because it's something that, I think I can see you've got a report and I'm looking forward to reading it. But certainly within our communities, we know how challenging it is to get men to, not just, I think, global majority communities, I think communities at large, it's always difficult to get men to speak about mental health. And we have been trying to create safe spaces through that project, which so far is still very much in early stages. I think it's about really buying that trust from the participants themselves and making sure that they're able to feel comfortable in those spaces. So through that, we've been delivering sports workshops, so like football, things which can be deemed culturally appropriate for those communities. So we managed to attract them. And following that, we then deliver these safe spaces. And we have, through How You Day project, counseling, a mental health nurse who is from the community as well, who we work with. And that has been, especially through How You Day project with the Arts Council Wales, has been really important and really kind of eye-opening for us in terms of having that specialized person in that space and talking to the participants themselves. I think for me, the question was, and I'm looking forward to reading the report, is more or less maybe, are there any opportunities for global majority organizations in Wales to get support from the Barring Foundations? Is there anything coming up soon?
No, and there was, and no one applied.
Yeah, no, I didn't know about it.
We had a specific call out. Was it last year? And it was noticeable that it was specifically for global majority organisations. I don't think there was a single one from Wales from memory, and it was really disappointingly, because absolutely we do not want to be an England funder. I mean, I keep telling people we are not a London funder. So we are so keen. I mean, I think there probably will be in the future, but I don't know what the priority will be next year. And if you look at, it's interesting. I mean, so many things that you've said are interesting. I think there's an intersection. Obviously, some people are refugees, and some people aren't.
Yeah.
So for refugees, there is this program with Counterpoint Arts, and there will be at least one event in Wales, but they would be able to tell you about that. I think there's also this very interesting intersection about men. So if you look at that report, in fact, a number of the projects deliberately in the creatively minded men are for men from global majority communities. These are the case studies and also the opinion pieces, and they're very interesting about really sort of compounded challenges and compounded discrimination, really. About so we're an arts funder. You talked about sports. We're an arts funder about attitudes to arts, about attitudes to mental health. You know, we had a long discussion with this week with Counterpoint Arts that I say the words mental health problems, and quite rightly they will say we're not using that language very much in what we're doing. And I absolutely understand that they're right and that they're experts. What they're talking about and what they see as much more acceptable is to talk about trauma. And when you think about refugees, they feel that absolutely is not stigmatizing language, and that the refugees that they're working with will easily and very straightforwardly engage with that language and talking about the trauma, both the trauma of being a refugee and the trauma of racism. And the language about mental health problems is a struggle, and many people are not going to find that an acceptable, at least at the moment, they're not going to find it an acceptable way in.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. Absolutely, I think there's a lot of similarities to what you said and what we do as well. So within How You Day project with Arts Council, there's a focus on settled communities and those who are new. We say new because amongst new, you have students who just arrived from various countries. So it's not just focusing on refugees and those who are seeking asylum, but it's wider than that. So no, thank you for sharing that, and shame really that no one applied, and hopefully something comes up.
By the way, at the my favourite phrase is teaching granny to suck eggs. I've got no idea what it means, but I'm worried about teaching granny to suck eggs in this. But I think it's called Skin Deep in Northern Ireland, that's particularly working on an intersection. I think it may be refugees rather than settled communities, but an intersection between arts, refugees and mental health. But anyway, and it's a specialist organisation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon?
Hi, David. My question's around really, would there be any kind of barriers into looking to contacting you regarding funding in the future if you don't have a direct arts coordinator within the health board? Obviously, as I said, we've worked in partnership with the
Yes, again, I'm not getting everywhere.
Sorry.
What's the last sentence? I got the first sentence.
Are there any barriers to applying if you don't have a direct partner, such as an arts and health coordinator within a health board? We've worked in the past with the arts and health and wellbeing team at Cutler and Vale, and they've applied, I know, to for some of our projects before. Are there any barriers if we apply as a charity on our own and moving forward without them if they go in? We've got loads of direct contacts with the wards. Would it be good to apply in partnership with the contact from the wards, or is it okay to apply as a charity?
What you need to do is, when we have a new open round like we just had for men, is to look at the criteria, because there's always different criteria. But the criteria for the last round would have been so it would have been any arts organisation that had a track record in working with people with mental health problems that wanted to improve the rate of participation of men.
Okay.
So there's always criteria, but it will vary with each open round, and we're extremely keen indeed to get applications from outside England.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and thanks, Becca, for putting the link into the Bearing Foundation's newsletter in the chat.
Yeah, everything is always advertised in the newsletter without exception.
Yeah, and we does try to upload all of your reports to the knowledge bank. So
as we were saying earlier, there's too much, isn't there? We can't keep up, so we can't expect anyone else to keep up. It's impossible.
Yeah. Between us all, we'll keep each other informed, hopefully. Does anyone have any more specific questions for David? The theme of today is funding generally. David represents, of course, one kind of significant funder, but are there any other kind of questions or reflections about funding more generally that you'd like to kind of share with the group? I mean, I know that you've all got arts, health and wellbeing lottery funding at the moment, and some of you have mentioned that you're kind of doing that kind of groundwork and test, you're at that kind of pilot phase. For Dealey, I know that that's what you're doing at the moment, and you'll be aware that there are opportunities when you've piloted something to then go into the Arts Council again for an invest level. What I've been hearing from many in the sector is that they're not able to go to that next level invest funding because of the percentage of match that you require to be eligible. So I have asked the Arts Council to come and talk to us about this and to reflect on this, because I am seeing many projects that are coming in that are totally at the right stage for invest or scale, but because they can't find the match, they're coming in for the groundwork again. So the work can't, there isn't enough capacity then within that funding to really grow and scale that work. So that feels quite a major issue for me at the moment. And with funding cuts very likely, we think, to come down the line again next year. We don't know what the Welsh Government's budget is yet, of course, but I'm feeling quite nervous about next year and beyond. So I do think that is something that we really need to be focusing on, not just with the Arts Council, but generally with funders across the UK. So is that relevant to anyone in the room? Anybody else in the room, would you say? Becca? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's outside of the Arts Council funding project that Inside Out are doing, but we're on our second round of like a pilot local authority funded arts and nature project. Our last round of it, we got 25% of people into volunteering roles afterwards, who now engage with the park that it was in more often, and we did the WAHWN's wellbeing scale, and they all showed a slight increase in their well-being. We've had this next round of funding from the local authority, but there's loads of feedback on how we're not working to make it sustainable, we're trying our best to make it sustainable. The people that we're targeting can't afford to pay us a fee to run the project off their own backs. If we do that, we'd maybe offer kind of like a bursary grant place to people who are referred in via the health board, and then maybe have people from the community who want to attend pay, but then that changes the program. It's less of a wellbeing support, mental health support program, and more of a general arts community program, which is fine, but that wasn't the point. So I wonder if there's more conversation around the baby steps in sustainability, the options for looking at sustainability and legacy in that way, because there's obviously lots of interest and need. Local authority asked us to apply to this again because they have so many people they want to refer in, but then almost reject us because we can't look at sustainability in a different way. So it's just very caught up. It's very like, I'm lost. I don't know how to work with them on that. But I just wonder if there's a conversation to have around it. So I'm looking at going for Heritage Lottery funding to get a longer block of project. But like, that's the only way I can think to make it more sustainable right now, is to apply for a bigger grant. And yeah, so I wonder if there's conversation around that, maybe.
Would anyone like to respond to Becca on that? Has anyone got a similar experience? Nick?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's our main problem really, is the same problem, the sustainability problem. So we're in a bit of an unusual situation because I was with independent arts charity with Bill Taylor Beals, who you mentioned last time. And then because we worked so much for ACE over the years, we set up a workshop, and our workshop's been running since 2015, and we've been running weekly workshops, but on different funding pots each time. So every time we get off the ground, we might do, like our last project was 2 years, Arts Council, and we got it off the ground and there were regular participants, and then it stops, and then all those participants are left up in the air, and we had a big break. And then because of the match funding situation with Arts Council, I was only able to go for the smaller pot of money, and then it looks like a pilot project again, which is strange when you've just done a 2-year quite established project, you know. So, and yeah, it's just, I've got no answer to the sustainability question, but it's definitely something that I would like to talk about and work out ways around that. And on the surface, I guess for us, we look like we're more established than we are, because I work for an organisation. I'm employed by an organisation rather than a freelance artist. But we're all funded there. So it's no different really. If we all still have to apply for our own funding, we still have gaps in our jobs, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know the answer. But ironically, we're working with the health board. Our wellbeing team is working with the primary care cluster. But as soon as I sort of approached them about match funding, they said, oh, there's no way we would have the money to do the match funding. So yeah. It's tough. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Charlotte?
Sorry, I can't see my raising the hand, but I don't know where it's gone. Yeah, just to say, I totally agree with what's been said about this. We're trialling in Dudley. We've set up a community board, so it's like a volunteer run thing, and it's very new, so I'm not saying it's definitely the way forward, but we've set up a board that's overseeing all our dance health groups in Dudley. We've got some funding from the Reaching Communities Fund in England over 3 years, and the idea behind this project is that the board look at making the group sustainable. They look at how we can use different funding streams, whether we can run funding events, whether we can get sponsorship. So we're kind of, we're at the start of that process really, of thinking, can we approach this differently, and will it work? So yeah, if anyone wants to discuss that, know more about that, then that'd be great to chat about that at some point. And also, if anyone else has got any ideas, it's interesting because I have the exact same problem. My group's in Norwich. Are coming to an end now because I've not managed to get the next pot of funding. So same as you just said there, I'm looking around now. What can I do next to try and to restart those groups that are really established groups? So just exactly what you've just said, Nick.
Alicia?
Yeah, I'm gonna echo a lot of the things that people have been saying, but something that's a massive problem for us is that we run these projects and they're very successful and we have demonstrable evidence of how they're creating a positive impact. No funder seems to want to fund something that's working. They want to fund things that are new and innovative. And so it's very hard to find funders who are willing to continue the funding of something that's already established and going well and working. So that's very difficult. What we've done, and I love what Charlotte was just saying, it's that forward thinking and putting the plan in place as early as possible. We've been really, really lucky. My role, actually, because I'm business development director, my role was created in order to help solve this problem, because Tanyo are trying very hard to pivot as hard as we can away from grant funding and diversify our income through tendering and through fundraising and through what do we have, what do we do already that we could even sell. So we do a program called Forest Arts, which is forest school, but with creative twists to it and creative elements to it. And we create toolkits around our curriculums, and our curriculums align with the Welsh curriculum, the new Welsh curriculum. And so we have toolkits that we can sell that are for people. They can hire us to come in and deliver the program, but also they can buy the toolkits themselves and deliver it for themselves and things like that. So it's trying to find things that we have that are resources that are marketable. And that's my job is also very much to look for grant funding and to seek grant funding, but we've just tried to become so strategic and look at it from a completely different lens than anything that Tanyo has ever had to do before. And that doesn't mean that we're soaring. It doesn't mean that we're like flying high and thriving in the way that we wish we were. It just means that we're just trying to think of it so differently and hoping to sort of make it through, the next few years in this very, very difficult landscape, and to support as many people and as many other arts organizations as we can help as well. So that things aren't closing left, right, and center all around us. We want other people to be thriving as well. So it's trying to be strategic about how we can support that also. So yeah, it's a lot of echoing what other people have said and commiserating, really, but it's the things we are all facing for sure.
Yeah, totally. And just before I bring you in, Johan, for anyone who's available on the 24th of October for our next network meeting, we've got Sandy Clubb, who's policy implementation at Wellbeing of Future Gens, to kind of discuss some of these issues around arts, sustainability, the holy grail of the arts becoming statutory. I know Becca's shared a link, or will be sharing a link in the chat. So it'd be really good to have your voices there. Johan?
Yeah, hi. So I just thought, putting aside the fact that art and creativity is sort of essential to a healthy, happy life, I'm just interested in David's view on it from a sort of investor point of view, because if we just assume that all the projects in here today are, bringing greater benefit than they cost. So an example just from one of my projects, we know that if we care for NHS staff and sort of manage to catch somebody before, we know that caring for somebody is cheaper the earlier you get to them, basically. So in cancer care, they say treating a stage 1 cancer is many times cheaper than treating a stage 4 cancer, for example, or catching somebody in their mental health sort of spiral early on is much cheaper. So for the NHS, for example, if a member of staff decides to leave their job because of burnout, which is very, almost 60% of NHS staff have thought of leaving their job since the pandemic. If one member of our staff leaves their job, that's a cost of between tens of thousands to potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds, depending on what level of in the organisation they're at. But the healthcare system, the NHS Wales, is in such dire straits when it comes to the finances that there's no way, there's no way they can invest in something that's not already sort of up and running. But I'm just interested in it from an investment point of view. Like how do we, it is the problem that we're going to do it anyway, as the song goes, or, what's it take to get real sustainable investment in the arts, I guess, is the question.
Well, sadly, I think you prefaced all that by saying I want to ask David, because David doesn't know. I think my response to it is the sort of things that you're talking about, in terms of you can use investment in different ways, and the way in which you're using it is basically an argument to the Treasury and to government. I mean, investment isn't really an argument. It is in sort of broad intellectual terms, but we haven't said that we're looking for a return on an investment in the following ways. We've said that we want to do our best to try and give creative opportunities to people with mental health problems, and for us that's an issue of access, and access isn't really an investment argument. So I think investment arguments are, and I think everyone's agreeing on this call, that we're all convinced that there's extremely good evidence about and rationality about investment, but that is basically a government issue about how it invests, not an independent funders. I do think you've got, I mean, my feeling is that there is traction about the argument that is winning a certain amount of, in England anyway, and actually in Scotland, in fact, is about the retention and support of and mental health and well-being of NHS staff. I think that, and you've been sort of very early in that journey. You do hear people talking about that ever more, and I suspect that is going to land. And at the moment, in England, I think it's probably going to land. At the moment, what's happening is England, it's tending to be around there's some quite big NHS charitable trusts, and it's tending to be the charitable trusts who, there are only a few of them that are really quite wealthy, but actually they are. So this isn't a big general argument. It's the wrong way in. It's using charitable funds to do what the NHS should be doing. But I think it probably is breaking through, actually. And I just don't know Wales well enough if it will break through there. But it's very much in the air. And I'd be amazed if, and I think, I mean, we were talking about Wrexham before, I think that exactly that argument needs to be made about care staff, social care staff, and activity providers, and the crisis in recruitment and retention there. We need to be making the same argument about the value of arts in care homes in terms of enriching the lives of care workers that we make about the lives of NHS staff.
Yeah, I know this is an area that you're working in, Ewan, as well, and you have, I believe, managed to get traction from some health boards. I know that, am I right in saying that you've got kind of match funding from a number of health boards across Wales for the work you're doing?
Yep, 5 health boards putting 1,000 £100 in to match fund delivering the course for their staff. But, you know, similar to other people here, coming to scaling up and finding 50% match funding where the NHS don't fund any arts and health anywhere directly. It feels a bit like gaslighting on behalf of the Arts Council, setting us impossible tasks. And
Yeah.
and to be honest, I've been sitting here in a rage because the continent and in Scandinavia there isn't arts and health because they've had culture houses for generations. You know, so again, the costs that we're incurring is catching the pandemic in mental illness, or in even later life. It's already set in the societies of those countries.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask David actually if there's any indication on this new government of a sense of what's been lost by destroying the youth service, for instance, or wanting to reconstruct some kind of safety net of services.
Well, I've at last got invited to number 10, so obviously they're now a much better government. I mean, I was a bit surprised. And apart from me grandstanding, I think that was also an effort to say, I think they'll probably, it's miles and miles and miles away, but I think they are listening a bit more, at least, and that's the start of something. And they are asking for advice. But I suspect there's no one that's on this call that's going to disagree with you. I mean, in lots of ways, Britain is increasingly becoming a failed state, and I include Wales in that. And the contrast, at least with, I know WAHWN's Norwegian, particularly with Norway in terms of sovereign wealth and how they've used the nation's assets. I mean, it's absolutely undeniable, and it's sort of at every direction that you turn in. It's youth services, it's the arts, it's health, it's later life. It doesn't matter what direction you turn in. Britain's been going in the wrong direction for at least 20 years, and we see the results. It's all predictable. That is what would happen if you kept underinvesting things when there's increased demand for such a long period of time. But these are political choices. Well, I always think about these things. They are political choices, and politics is choice. And things do change. They are not inevitable. And they're not forever, but everyone's, I think, realistic. It's going to be a very long time. I was going to say something in micro, that there are a number of the micro level. There's a number of small number of arts organisations that I've worked with that have had a certain degree of success. It's only very small, in using, I think it's called, in England, it's called personal independence payments. They're probably the same in Wales, I'm not sure, which is what it said, and you can use that for the arts if you want. But it's really what, I can't remember if it was which colleague was, it was Tanio Arts talking about that at the moment, apart from, there's not enough money going around, so part of any of this is luck in reality, and luck. You can quote me on that. Luck matters in life, but I mean, most people would say, well, the thing to do is what Tanya is doing, which is the broadest possible conception about the ways in which you can in which you can find resources, and there's that is going to be highly context specific about what's reasonable at your scale and in your situation. But you all know that.
Yeah, I was reading the other day as well about the there was a pilot programme that's coming to an end in Ireland, the basic income for practitioners.
Yeah, right.
And they're going to carry
That
on
really
with
is
that,
a
I
lottery.
believe.
That
Yeah.
really is a lottery. So
I think it was 2,000 artists. It was randomly chosen, I believe, but it's been really popular, and they're going to continue that for 5 years. That's quite inspiring to hear about. I think it's something like £276 a week, but over a
It's
2-year
fantastic.
period. Yeah, yeah. I think we definitely need that in Wales.
We do, and the Arts Council of Wales have thought about it,
Mm,
but that was before the current cut.
yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
mean, the Arts
definitely.
Council of Wales, I suspect none of you are going to like this, but they have been much more on the front foot than any of the other arts councils about trying to support arts and health, and it's clearly hugely inadequate for where you are, but in relative terms, they have.
Yeah, there's a long history in Ireland of arts offices are embedded in the county councils. They used to give artists a stipend of 6,000 a year and free studio space. So it's just like like David said, it's a political, cultural decision as well.
Yeah.
Which is why we need independence in Wales, so that we can reflect our own culture.
Yeah. I've hearing about a couple of quite good examples in Wales, really, of where the arts are becoming more kind of embedded. Not least in Conwy Council, I know that kind of culture officers sit at all the kind of key meetings, including planning, transport, health, etc., social services. And we're hoping to get somebody from Conway to come and speak at a group. But also some of you might be familiar with the Artist in Residence post at Rhondda Cynon. I think we had a network meeting a couple of weeks ago that I wasn't there for. So yeah, there are little pockets of really good
But
kind of
also,
embedded.
things have gone backwards. So saying, oh, you used to have these culture, they've got these arts officers and local authorities. Everywhere in England used to have arts officers in local authorities 30 years ago. It was completely normal, and there'd probably be a team. And now it's almost it's a tiny minority that have them, because it's been eroded. It's gone in the wrong direction for at least 20 years.
So, yeah, God, there's so much to address. It does feel a bit overwhelming.
But
And
what
yet
can be undone can be repaired again eventually.
well, that's a really optimistic note to kind of end on. Onwards and upwards. So we're coming towards the end. I know most of us need to be away by 11:30, not least David. I wondered if I could just share a couple of brief updates that might be of interest. So as I said earlier, we're going to ask somebody from the Arts Council. The Arts Council are very keen to come and talk to the group about some of these issues. They're really aware of the challenges for the sector, so I think they need to have that kind of open dialogue with us around this. So before the end of the year, before Christmas, we will focus a learning group on this again. So really encourage you to come back and kind of share your challenges and frustrations. On the 17th of October, we have a Welsh language practitioner network meeting in our ambition to be working towards our Welsh language development plan and our Cynnig Cymraeg Welsh offer. We want to bring Welsh language creative practitioners together to really look at how we can support them, if there are any gaps, anything we can do to support them. So that's 17th of October. Network meeting on the 24th of October, as I mentioned, with Sandy Clubb from the Welsh Wellbeing of Future Gens office, to talk about a 7-year vision. Just would urge as many of you as possible to come along to that. And our next learning group is also on the 24th of October in the morning, and we have Jane Willis with us. Some of you have already been to these sessions. It's where Jane walks us through writing a robust case study. Some of you have already done it. You're really welcome to come back and do it again, because as you know, it's a requirement of your Arts Council funding that you use the WAHWN template to write up a case study. And then two very other quick updates. Some of you here may have already taken part in our How Are You Doing strategies for wellbeing training, which the Bearing have supported. And we've still got a few more spaces left. And I cannot stress how brilliant this training is. It's delivered by Justine Wheatley, used to be director of Peak, is exceptional in this training. So we still have a few spaces left, and it's really about helping explore organisational culture around how you're supporting your staff and your freelancers, and really getting you on the road to developing an action plan. We would really love to, this is probably the last time we're going to be running this programme for now. So please do have a look at it. If anybody is really keen to do it, but is sort of thinking, oh, well, we just can't afford it, please have a conversation with us, because we'd rather people did it than not. And then finally, we've still got a couple of Go and See bursaries available. These are up to £200. They really are kind of first come, first serve, and they're about supporting freelancers in the arts and health field who want to do some research or visits or training that's going to kind of support their practice. We have particular kind of focus this year, global majority practitioners, because we've had so few in the past, but also practitioners who are looking at expanding on their kind of creative nature, environment, climate emergency themes within their practice. If there's some training or research that you want to do, then that's another kind of key priority for us this year. So I think there's about 2 or 3 left. Yeah, do please have a look at that. Are there any final comments or reflections from anybody before we draw to a close? No? I'd really like to thank David very, very much. I'd never intended that you would stay for the whole session, but it's been so valuable having your thoughts and reflections. And can I just encourage everyone to sign up for that Bearing Foundation newsletter? Yeah, keep your eyes open, and we'll share, of course, any opportunities for you to contribute to reports. I think there's a call out at the moment for your creative ageing organisations to upload a case study.
Yeah, that would be great.
So okay, well, wishing you all a wonderful rest of the week. If you've got any queries or anything WAHWN can help you with before the next learning group, then please do get in touch. You've got mine and Becca's email addresses. But yeah, thanks very much, David. Really appreciate your time this morning.
In Wales, thank you.
Okay. Diolch yn fawr. See you soon.